Hey friends, hope you guys are doing well. Um, so, started reading a book. This is my second time trying to finish this book. It's a book called um, Quicksilver by author Neil Stephenson. And the book is taking place in the beginning, or it begins in the beginning of the 18th century. And the 18th century is something that it's fast becoming my favorite of the centuries. What I have, oops, what I have here is a page about the War of Spanish Succession, but before I get into this, hold on, let me start a timer. Hey Siri, start a timer for 12 minutes. Before I get into this, I do want to show you guys, you folks, our map. That is getting filled. Not to the brim, but it's getting more and more filled. So, like I said, we have the different centuries labeled in these columns. Orange or gold, whatever color this looks like it is to you, is the Middle Ages. Kind of empty. Haven't had too much action there. But now as we start to move forward in time, we have all these events that are happening, of course. The 15th and the 16th century, so the 1400s, the end of the 1400s is sort of the beginning of what historians call the modern era, which of course, this would be kind of early modern period. And it sort of ends at the Industrial Revolution, which depending on where you are, starts at different times. And I think it starts at the end of the 18th century in England. But depending on where you are, it gets to you at different times. So, our focus, I do like doing these recaps because it helps me remember everything that's going on. I can go like this because we don't need the bottom portions. So, we have the fall of Constantinople. This occurs, kind of, what's interesting is that at this junction between 14 and 15, we have these three really influential figures that I'm sure you've all heard of: Da Vinci, Galileo, Copernicus. They're all living contemporaneously to each other. The Renaissance is starting kind of all throughout the 1400s, kind of begins in the beginning of the 1400s, which is basically this kind of intellectual relearning of old Roman ideas, classical ideas. It's sped up probably by the fall of Constantinople, which is sort of the end of the Roman lineage in the form of the Byzantine Empire. This happens 1453, kind of middle of the 15th century. And right after and underneath kind of this, we have the Renaissance, and we have underneath, we see the Age of Discovery. This is the age where European powers are starting to explore. They're hemmed in by the Muslims on the east, the Ottoman Empire, also the south. So they need to find other ways to trade. So they start sailing the seas, and we start making these huge discoveries around this time. Right here, I think in this kind of junction as well, we have the discovery of Christopher Columbus discovers the West Indies, aka kind of the Caribbean. I think we have Francisco Magellan, we have Vasco da Gama. All these sailors, they're basically Spaniards. Spaniards is sort of Spain and Portugal is like leading the charge here in terms of like exploration, more on that later. It's interesting to me that they're leading the charge, but they also sort of have a fall from power at some point. Perhaps today's article is going to clear up what happens and what goes wrong for them. Spain conquers the Aztecs in 1521. A lot of figures that I haven't got into yet are our sort of are important here. Okay, so in terms of the big wars, so if we're getting into the 1600s, we have the 30 Years' War. It's a terrible, terrible war. A lot of people died, and not a lot comes out of it. In terms of like, we have these, absolute states, Spain, France, and they're warring each other. I'm kind of starting to forget. I have to rewatch that video about the 30 Years' War. But I do remember it being a very high death toll, and so on. Thomas Hobbes, of course, lives throughout this dreary period, and he develops his philosophical outlook. Suffice it to say, the lives of men are short and brutish. We have the War of the Three Kingdoms. Haven't touched on it. I'm saying everything with an asterisk, by the way, has not been touched upon. 9 Years' War, Year War, Glorious Revolution. Of course, these are events happen kind of one after another. Of course, like we mentioned, there are absolute powers during the 1600s, but there are exceptions. England and the Dutch Republic are exceptions to the rule. They're sort of these robust, kind of democratic, more maybe federation we should call it, instead of like a absolute monarchy organization. It's more of a federation type of organization, and there's robust middle classes, and things are different in England and the Dutch Republic. And the Glorious Revolution is the last successful invasion of England, where William of Orange is reinstated, or he's made a king of England, and they kick out James 2/7 of the Stuart line, much to the chagrin of the Jacobites, who want to restore House Stuart to power. By the way, huge figures, Spinoza, so René Descartes, Kepler, we have Newton. These are figures that we have here at the bottom. See this Age of Enlightenment? This spans the sort of later part of the 1600s, the entire 18th century, and goes all the way to the beginning of the 19th century. Some say it with the death of Immanuel Kant. We have, so Spinoza, I guess the end of Descartes' life kind of marks the beginning. So maybe he needs to be moved here, although I'm not 100% certain. I know that definitely Spinoza lived on the latter end of the 1600s. Definitely coincides. He's definitely an Enlightenment thinker. Anyways, so what we're going to be talking about today, after this super long prelude, we have the War of Spanish Succession, the War of the Spanish Succession, something that I'm not so sure about, that's important, and had big ramifications, and I wonder if the ramifications end up weakening Spain. Spain, of course, falls, diminishes as a power, as a power, and I wonder if this has something to do with it. So yeah, let's without further ado, let's get into it. So the War of Spanish Succession was a European great power conflict, and it was fought in 01 to 14, so kind of first decade of the 18th century. So Charles II of Spain, he dies. He dies without children, which of course is a struggle, because a lot of different males are going to try to assert themselves as the rightful heirs of this massive, massive empire. Okay. empire. Spain, of course, has massive territorial holdings overseas. Huge. So he dies childless. Okay, so Charles named his heir this guy, Philip of Anjou. Philip of Anjou, he was backed by his grandfather. So everyone's cousins here. So look, Louis XIV of France, he's the cousin of like the Spanish heir. So the opponent of Philip of Anjou is Archduke Charles of Austria, who's supported by the Grand Alliance. So basically it seems like out of all of the possible heirs, the most powerful of those heirs are the ones that history remembers, and that seems to be Philip of Anjou and the Archduke Charles of Austria. So basically we have this Grand Alliance versus the other powers. Related conflicts include Great Northern War and Queen Anne's War, but in short of time, we're going to just keep plowing through. I think it is. I mean, I wonder if it's significant, the sort of 7 Years' War and the Glorious Revolution. Or is that what it's called? The Glorious Revolution? Am I getting that right? Yeah, the Glorious Revolution. I wonder if that has anything to do with it, because this happens right at the sort of turn of the century. Kind of world. Basically, England is ruled by a man from the Dutch Republic, basically. So let's keep reading. So, although by 01, Spain was no longer a predominant power. So even here, even in 01, it's not a predominant power in Europe. Oh, it's not a predominant power in Europe. I wonder if that has to do with it. I wonder if the fact that, so it says here that they're a global power. They remain a global power, but not a predominant power in Europe. I wonder if it has to do with sort of like, you can't spread, like they spread themselves too thin, you know? Yeah, you have a piece of butter, it's small, but you want to have a buttery piece of bread, so you spread that thing super thin. You have kind of a little bit of a butter taste on everything, but this is a terrible analogy. I apologize. Anyways, it seems like they maybe spread themselves thin in terms of manpower. Maybe there weren't enough competent male Spanish citizens left in Europe to make decisions, fight in wars, lead wars, so on. Maybe they were too busy. What's the word? Kind of like they were busy. Oops. Okay, so I'm going to cut this one off. There's going to be a part 2, so stay tuned for it. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe, because I'm a very small channel, and any help is help at this point. Also, you can, because I'm small, you can like reach out and literally just comment on a video and I'll get back to you and answer your questions. Just make sure the stuff that you're like typing to me makes sense and is legible. I'm not going to respond to crap, I'm not going to respond to just like digits or weird statements that make no sense. So like leave a timestamp, let me know like the exact part you want to ask, why, make it easier for me to like talk to you, basically. So I'm not going to get back to crappy comments, but if you're taking your time and making a comment, I'm definitely going to get back to you. Anyways, have a good rest of the week and catch me on the next installment of this video. Bye.